One soldier, one position, against an entire company. It is a scenario that defies belief. A moment of such staggering imbalance that it seems lifted from legend, not history. Yet, in the brutal winter of 1942, on the frozen Eastern Front, it happened. This is not merely a story of survival. It is the story of a deliberate, calculated sacrifice, of how the will of a single man, armed with little more than a machine gun and sheer defiance, can bend the very momentum of a battle. This is the story of the soldier who fought 200 enemy troops alone until his ammo ran out.
By January 1942, the tide before Moscow had turned. The German Wehrmacht, exhausted and overextended, was reeling from the Soviet winter counteroffensive. But the war was far from over.
In the vicious fighting west of the capital, every village, every hill, every river crossing became a battleground measured in blood and time. One such crossing was a stone bridge over the icy Reseta River near the town of Borovsk. Holding the western end of this bridge was a critical mandate for the Soviet 13th Army, a linchpin in their push against the German 4th Panzer Division's faltering lines. Assigned to this task were elements of the 322nd Rifle Division. Among them was a machine gunner in a forward outpost, a young man whose name would become etched in the division's lore, Corporal Nikolai Sirotinin. Pause. Little is known of Sirotinin before this day. He was not a decorated hero, not a political officer. He was a soldier, one of millions. But on the morning of January 17th, 1942, the entire weight of the German assault on this sector would fall upon his shoulders. His unit was ordered to form a defensive perimeter, a series of strong points designed to slow any German attempt to retake the bridgehead. Sirotinin, with his trusted Maxim M1910 heavy machine gun, was placed in a slightly advanced, isolated position, a small snow-covered knuckle of high ground with a clear field of fire over the approach road. It was a good position for a machine gunner. It was also a death trap. Dawn broke under a leaden sky, the temperature so cold that metal seared bare skin. The Soviet scouts reported movement, a lot of it. Elements of the German 4th Panzer Division, specifically a battle group built around a Panzer Grenadier company, were advancing. Their orders: smash through the Soviet outposts, reclaim the bridge, and stabilize the line. They brought the fury of a modern army with them, at least 200 infantry, supported by half-track personnel carriers and several Panzer III medium tanks. Their confidence, though dented by the winter, was still palpable. They expected a fight, but a conventional one. From his perch, Sirotinin watched the column approach. He checked his weapon. The Maxim was water-cooled, reliable, capable of sustained fire. He had belts of ammunition, a stockpile of grenades, and a single anti-tank rifle, a PTRD-41, lying in the snow beside him. His comrades were over 200 yards to his rear, digging in, preparing their own defenses. His forward position was meant to disrupt, to bleed the enemy advance. What happened next would redefine the word disrupt. By 0900 hours, the German point element was within 800 yards. They moved with professional caution, infantry flanking the road, scouts probing ahead. They had not yet pinpointed Sirotinin's nest, camouflaged as it was by snow and the gnarled branches he'd used for cover. He let the scouts pass. He was waiting for the main body. Pause. By 0930. The heart of the column was in the killing zone. The low rumble of tank engines filled the air, mingling with the shouts of German NCOs. Sirotinin took a final breath, the frigid air burning his lungs. He centered his sights on the lead half-track. Then, he opened fire. The deafening, ripping roar of the Maxim shattered the morning calm. A long, controlled burst stitched across the column. The lead vehicle shuddered, its windshield exploding, the driver killed instantly. It slewed sideways, blocking the narrow road. Instantly, chaos erupted. German infantry, trained and disciplined, scrambled for cover in the ditches. But the field of fire was perfect. Sirotinin traversed his gun. Short, brutal bursts, cutting down soldiers as they tried to deploy. For 10 minutes he held them there, pinned and confused, believing they were under attack from a fortified platoon position. By 1000 hours, the German commanders realized the fire was coming from a single isolated point. Their anger turned to methodical fury. Mortar rounds began to walk up the slope toward Sirotinin's position. Machine gun teams were ordered to lay down suppressing fire. The Panzer IIIs, their 50mm guns traversing, began to blast the knoll with high-explosive shells. Dirt, snow, and shrapnel geysered around the young corporal. Yet, between barrages, whenever the German infantry tried to rise and assault, the deadly Maxim would speak again, each burst precise, economical, deadly. For 3 brutal hours, Nikolai Sirotinin fought his one-man war. The world shrunk to the view down his iron sights, the burning heat of his gun's water jacket, the growing pile of spent brass at his feet. He shifted position within his shallow pit, avoiding the worst of the incoming fire. He used the anti-tank rifle. A sharp, thunderous crack echoed as he fired at a Panzer III's tracks. He may have disabled one. Reports are unclear amidst the chaos. What is clear is that an entire German company, backed by armor, was being held at bay by a single determined man. But the odds were absolute. German mortar teams had his range. Shrapnel tore through his greatcoat. A machine gun bullet grazed his temple, blood frosting instantly in the cold. His ammunition was running low. He could see the enemy closing in, using the craters from their own mortars as cover, inching forward in short, desperate rushes. His supporting comrades to the rear were themselves engaged, unable to assist. Serotonin was completely isolated, a rock in a torrent of steel and fire. By 12:30 hours, the German commander committed his reserve platoon to a full frontal assault. They came in a staggered line, covering fire from every available weapon. The air itself seemed to vibrate with the fury directed at that one small piece of earth. Serotonin's Maxim answered, but its bursts were growing shorter. He was counting his remaining belts. He threw his last grenades down the slope, the explosions momentarily halting the gray-clad figures, but still they came. The situation was impossible. The bridgehead was now secondary. The entire German effort was focused on the annihilation of this one inexplicably stubborn Russian soldier. The turning point was not a rescue. It was not the arrival of reinforcements or a sudden stroke of tactical genius. The turning point was Corporal Serotonin's acceptance of the inevitable and his decision to control its terms. His last belt of ammunition was fed into the Maxim. He waited as the German assault line closed to within 50 yards, point-blank range. He then stood, exposing himself fully to direct fire into the heart of the enemy. He emptied the entire belt in one long, continuous, defiant roar. And then silence. The gunfire from the knoll stopped. The only sound was the moan of the wind and the cries of the wounded. Pause. His ammunition was expended. He had held for over 4 hours. He had inflicted catastrophic casualties, disrupted the attack timetable, and allowed his main line to solidify their defenses. With no means left to fight, Nikolai Serotonin did not surrender. According to the few German accounts that later filtered out, and the testimony of nearby Soviet soldiers who witnessed the final moments, he stood up from his shattered position. He was seen to calmly take out his sidearm, a Tokarev TT-30 pistol. He faced the advancing enemy and fought with his sidearm until he was finally cut down by a storm of submachine gun fire. His body fell beside his silent smoking machine gun. The German force, bloodied and delayed, eventually secured the knoll and continued toward the bridge. But the ferocity of Serotonin's stand had stolen their momentum and their nerve. The Soviet main line, fortified and warned, repulsed the subsequent attack. The bridgehead held. The strategic line was stabilized, in no small part due to the hours bought by one man's sacrifice. The cost was absolute. Corporal Nikolai Serotonin was killed in action. Verified German casualty reports from the engagement, though incomplete, indicate over 80 soldiers killed or wounded from the assaulting company, a catastrophic 40% casualty rate inflicted primarily by a single defender. His actions became immediate legend within the 322nd Rifle Division. Pause. For decades, Siratinen's story was a regimental myth, difficult to fully verify in the fog of war. There was no film, no surviving photograph of the man himself, but post-war research, cross-referencing Soviet unit diaries with German war records of the 4th Panzer Division, confirms the core facts: the date, the location, the stalled German assault, and the severe losses associated with reducing a fanatical single-point resistance. In 1960, he was posthumously awarded the Order of the Patriotic War, First Class. While he was never formally titled a hero of the Soviet Union, his name is etched on memorials in the Kaluga region. His story endures as the ultimate embodiment of the Ostatny Boy, the last stand. It is a testament not to the glory of war, but to the profound impact of human courage and the terrifying price of a single piece of ground. The frozen knoll near the Rosetta River is quiet now. But for one morning in 1942, it was the center of a storm of courage and sacrifice that defied all military logic. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to Untold War Stories as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life.